What is happening, gurus? It is the 11th of Jan today, and we are looking at the charts from a few different perspectives. One thing I want to do is I actually want to get into one of these charts that I shared yesterday in the Telegram, just looking sort of at the chart through a different lens. And, I think before May of 2021, I don't think anyone had ever heard of Wyckoff, at least no one here. I know I had never heard of Wyckoff theory, schematics, or any of that distribution accumulation stuff. But it became quite apparent to the crypto market that we are not immune from Wyckoff. Just for anyone that doesn't know, Wyckoff is basically a theory that was developed by a guy called Richard Wyckoff in the early 1900s, where he talks about this idea of, they weren't called whales back then, but he calls this idea of the composite man, basically a bunch of whales who are coordinating market moves so that they can make the most money from the top and from the bottom, i.e. selling to the FOMO buyers at the top and forcing panic sales at the bottom and buying everybody's cheaper assets. So whether it was gold, whether it was dollars, whether it was forex or assets or stocks, and now crypto, these schematics get used quite often, and they're a great way for a lot of these sort of big players to make a lot more money, especially with with an asset like Bitcoin, where the supply is finite. At the end of the day, like I've said a few times, there just isn't enough Bitcoin to go around. And that's why these coordinated moves are happening. It's to exhaust retail traders. It's to exhaust the weak hands. It's to get them to let go of their Bitcoin, their Satoshis, their crypto, so that it can all be bought up, for the gains of the whales. So what I want to do before we get into the rest of the charts, I want to have a look at this chart. What we're looking at here is the daily candles on Bitcoin. We're looking at the daily chart of Bitcoin trading against the US dollar. Now, what I'm going to do here is just to take you through an understanding of what we're looking at here. These are obviously the bullish phases. These are obviously the bearish phases, bullish phase, and then bearish phase that are represented by these sort of waves at the top here. And then each one of these circles represents a peak within that wave before we saw the trend flip and then obviously go down. Now, when we're at the top here, it's known as the distribution phase. The reason why it's called distribution is because this is where the whales are distributing their crypto for money. They are distributing it not to each other, but they are distributing it to the FOMO buyers who think that the price is still yet to go to $100,000 from 64,000. Why anyone would ever think that is absolutely beyond me, but that's what happens every time, and you can see exactly what they do here. People buy here and they absolutely dump on them, and that's how they distribute their crypto for cash. They will then go and they will coordinate a very well-structured, coordinated media frenzy around crypto, which will induce fear and panic in the entire crypto market, as we've all discussed before, and that sends it into what is then the accumulation phase. Now, accumulation just means that they start accumulating again. They start buying up. They will sell. They'll make you force sell here. They'll make people panic over here. They'll make people panic again over here. And the worst part is over here on this pump, people would have thought that this was the bounce. So everybody would start getting in, only for them to collapse it again and take it for one more exhausting test. So we can sort of see the similar pattern rolling out here. And I'll get into sort of what these blue bars here talk about. But basically, you can see how it was one test over here, then another test over there, then a third test before the full reversal and the move up. So here we've got our first test. Here we've got our second test. I do believe that we are due for one more test of 39,540K before the move up. It could even come as low as, 39.5 seems to be the one that makes the most sense. It would also complete the wedge quite nicely as well, which would allow us to come out of that and then see potentially a bullish move towards the 70K region. Whether or not that happens, I'm not too sure. I don't think that this is going to happen anytime soon. I think we could see something like that, which could go sideways and then up towards the end of the end of Q1 and the beginning of Q2. So I'm not too sure about that. But one interesting thing to note here is to look at the time frames and how long these are happening. So one thing that's also important to understand with crypto is that for a very long time, the cycles worked in a multi-year cycles. So you had the period from, let me just quickly put that away. You had the period from, let me just quickly come back here and just see. It would be easier if I was viewing it in an annual sort of time frame, but that's not a problem, or a weekly time frame. But you can basically see here how these cycles were very extended periods of time. So you had this last all that year where it was one year of diminishing returns. full 12 months, maybe a little bit longer, of an absolute bear market before coming up again and then creating the bear market and then the whole COVID situation. But the point in case is that I think that these cycles that we've identified and these cycles that we keep talking about are no longer the same as what we are used to and what they have been in the past. And the reason is because there is just too much money now. It takes too much money to move Bitcoin. And at the end of the day, there's way too many people that are involved on an institutional level who I don't think are going to allow for Bitcoin to sort of, capitulate every year or every 2 years or on the back of every halvening or whatever the case is. I think that we're going to see a structured move into a more similar sort of asset class like the stock market, where it's not as volatile. Unfortunately, that means that these volatile swings and these, sort of swings that make people millions, if not hundreds of millions, will eventually come to an end and will look a lot like the stock market, which, I'm going to quickly just open up the stock market here so you guys can see what the S&P 500 chart looks like in comparison. Oddly enough, the funny thing is that in the last sort of 12 months, 14 months, the stock market has become quite volatile, and people joke that crypto has become more like the stock market has become a bit more like crypto. But you can sort of see here how you don't have these massive, big head and shoulders that are huge on the chart. I mean, if this was a crypto chart, it would look something along the lines of this. It would go up and then down, and then have this huge thing, and then a head and shoulders, and then go down and augment, and then come down and then distribute. You can see how none of that happens in the stock market. It's all very slow. It's very gradual. But one thing that everybody can agree upon is that the direction is one way, and that is to the top far right corner, which means that you could invest anywhere in the stock market and you would make money over a 10, 15, 20, 30, 40-year period, especially with things like IRAs and 401ks and all these sort of ETFs that allow you to basically invest into the stock market with very little risk exposure, and you can make a lot more money doing that kind of thing over a long period of time. But of course, we are not here for 2-3% a year. We are here to make proper gains. We are here to make those moonshot gains that we all sort of want to look at and want to identify on the ground. So that's basically what's happening here. The last thing that I want to just discuss is in terms of the time period, which is what I was talking about in terms of the cycles. You can see how this time period here was 103 days. This accumulation story, this whole sort of Wyckoff move here, was 103 days. Now, this next one that's happening here, which you can see, the sort of the distribution period up at the top here, was nearly half of that. That was only 63 days before it turned around. At the bottom here, however, which is quite interesting, you can see that the accumulation phase seems to be following the same time sort of time period and time frame, which is 62 days. It's almost 62 days to the button if you measure it on either side from peak to peak, if we obviously do get that sort of test over there. So let's see what happens. It's going to be very interesting. Before I close off the video, so this video is basically sort of just let's look at where we're at in the market. Let's see what could be happening over the next month or so, and then take it from there. Like I've said many a time before, I don't have a crystal ball. I do not sort of purport to have a crystal ball and insight into the future of where things are going. It's simply looking at the chart, simply understanding where we're at, and looking at patterns and making decisions based on the probability of those patterns coming true, and then obviously having a thesis and working off that. So quickly, what I want to do is obviously just want to look at the BTC dominance and the Tether dominance as well. The Bitcoin dominance is over here. Have a look at this chart. It's actually dropping. Last night or yesterday, we found support quite nicely, or it found support quite nicely at the bottom here at around 39%, which is extremely low. I think you guys have to understand and just appreciate just how low Bitcoin dominance is here. And what that means is that at the end of the day, people are starting to lose interest in Bitcoin as the profit maker. Bitcoin can be a good store of value. You coming through with $500,000, it would be prudent to put that into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin as a store of value has proved itself time and time again. However, in terms of making short gains, Bitcoin, people are starting to learn that Bitcoin is not the place to go to for that. However, Bitcoin still leads the space very much so, and in saying that, it obviously needs to be followed and the dominance needs to be checked all the time. So we had a bit of a breakout here. It's looking like it could be a fake out, and it could continue to maybe go sideways along here, which is great, because if Bitcoin dominance does stay down, it's going to see somewhat of an augmented alt season once Bitcoin starts moving up to the upside again, which would be quite fantastic. So yeah, that's pretty much the situation on the Bitcoin dominance front. Then on the Tether dominance front, which we've spoken about a few times, this is how much of of the money in crypto is in Tether, i.e. in stablecoin, versus how much of that money is into crypto assets. And you can see that we are quite high and quite heavily up into Tether here. So that just means that most of the market is tethered up. I'm pretty sure that this is basically a lot of where the funds are at the moment. A lot of the funds, a lot of the institutions, a lot of the big banks are still tethered up. I think what they're doing is they're waiting to see a number of things. They're waiting for news from the Fed in the States, just in terms of where the tapering is going to happen, where the increases in the rates are going to happen. That all has to do with interest rates. For those that aren't sure, you can check the news that was towards the end of last year. The Fed basically said that they're going to raise the interest rates 3 times in 2022, which is unprecedented. It is massive news, and it is quite hectic for the global economy, but especially for the American economy. Unfortunately, that is heavily tied into crypto. As we know, the US stock market tends to dictate where crypto goes. So that's sort of Tether dominance at the moment. We will be looking to see where this drops because, like I said a few times, where this drops over here, we'll know that that's where the reversal starts happening, and then we can obviously take it from there. There is another thing that I do want to show you guys, and that is this over here. So this is looking at the total market cap of all cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, including alts, including DeFi, including everything, and we can see that it's pretty much on the down on the low here. It could be looking to confirm this line again before moving up, and that would actually sort of fit in with our thesis perfectly on that last and third test of the accumulation phase. Let me just go back so that nobody's confused and we can all just see what I'm talking about. This third and last test over here. So if we just hang on 1 second, that's this third and last test over here, which is around, on the charts looking like the very, very start of Feb. Over here, coming down to here, very, very start of Feb. I mean, that's pretty much perfect if you ask me. So I think it would be prudent to expect more downside after sort of this nice little bear trap and a little bit of a pump. So that's sort of where we are at the moment. There is one more total that we can look at, which is quite interesting. It's a little bit strange. I'm a little bit concerned with it because I'm not too sure where sort of where it's going, and this could indicate a future downside. Basically what we're looking at over here is a rising wedge, and what a rising wedge means is that the price is getting wedged between the top line over here where the hardest resistance is and obviously the greatest support that we've got on the rising line. Now these tend to generally break down. It usually reaches a point where it gets to sort of squeezed up between the two wedges and then breaks downward. That is usually the trajectory of a falling wedge, which is quite interesting because if DeFi, this is obviously we're looking at the crypto total DeFi market cap. If that is coming down, that's going to already be a signal for where the rest of the market is. But I'm not too sure. We could actually see the decoupling from Bitcoin in the DeFi space, in the gaming space. It's all going to depend on narrative. It's all going to depend on utility. And that's what's going to give some of these assets the way out of the coupling to Bitcoin. So that's pretty much that. If anybody has any questions, of course, you know where to find me. And I'll be looking to see where the charts are going today. I'll be looking at a few trades on my own personal side once we sort of get a little bit more confidence in the market, and I'll be looking to maybe trade this rise back up to the top of the wedge. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. Just give me 1 sec. Sorry about that. We can actually look at it in the intraday as well, just because the intraday is starting to look quite interesting as well with the 4-hourly chart, which is over here. So here we go. Let's just open that up. Just excuse all the lines. Sorry about that. There we go. Let's just open this up nicely so we can have a look at it properly. Right. So basically, in terms of intraday trading, I would be looking to maybe trade this sort of reversal up here. I can almost guarantee that it's going to the top here. The way I feel is that it's going to the top here so that it can come down, confirm these lower points, and then move on. That's just the way it makes sense to me. That's what it looks like. It makes sense to me. And it seems to me like that's where it's going to be looking to come and confirm. I don't know if it's going to get to the bottom here before moving up. We'll have to see about that. It could come back to the previous section because we do obviously have that rising trend line that we're dealing with as well. So let's have a look. Let's see. Any questions, you guys can hit me up in the channel and in the chat, And yeah, I'm looking forward to an interesting week, developing up to a very interesting weekend. My theory is that we should see this sort of reversal happen towards the end of Jan. It could start from about the 16th to the 17th. Funnily enough, that's where some of Bitcoin's astrology is actually lining up as well, for those that have been following the moon phase saga. But yeah, that's pretty much what, all in all. And if anybody has any questions, just hit me up. Have a great week, my gurus.